to Live Reality Games. My name is Steven, and I'm back for more Surviving Reelfoot coverage. The Merge is here, and who better to talk about the Merge than the reigning champ from Season 9 of Surviving Reelfoot, Bluff Ranch, Justin. Justin, how are you doing tonight?
I am doing great. I have been glued to the live feeds. Poor Nathan, I've been frustrated by his signal. I know he's battling through crazy signals in Western Tennessee, out in the boonies there to get us all that content. Really appreciate it. I've been barely working and mostly real footing this week. So I am loving every second of it. And it's been a great distraction from work and life and all of that. So I'm having serious FOMO. I can't believe it was a year ago that I was in those same woods at that exact camp or some of those exact camps and playing the game that we love. So it's been wild to revisit.
So which camp is the Carlton tribe at?
I think the Merge camp that they're at now, I've heard rumor. I'm like watching and I have a very hard time understanding the spatial divisions and like where things actually are. Cause I don't think they're at the old Rutherford camp. Nothing like has looked like that camp. So I feel like maybe they've found a couple new spots. I think the current camp that they're at now for the Merge is the Carlton camp from what I'm reading in the audience chat, and a couple of things I've seen. I was like, that kind of looks familiar, but I'm really, really bad at it. I think the yellow camp was the Carlton camp, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
I mean, so when you've been watching it, you've been seeing the players soaked in the rain, not sleeping, and just like, the good times. I miss it. Is that what's been going on?
It's so wild because we had maybe, I think we had one challenge that was in like brutal rain, and we had one other like storm where we all just kind of sat under our tarps and kind of rode it out, but it was only a couple hours. I mean, we were pretty lucky when it came to weather for our season. We experienced enough for it to feel Survivor-ish, but not anything like they're experiencing. I mean, to have to deal with rain and cold overnight is the worst. I mean, I don't think I was ever really cold at night when I was there. So, hearing some of the stories they're telling about being wet, being cold, being in the mud, it sounds like a nightmare, and I love everything about it, but I'm kind of glad it wasn't us. I'm kind of glad we didn't
because your survival challenge when you played in 2019, correct? That was the season of heat stroke, and so you just had extreme heat the entire time. And my year before that was all the downpour, and like not as much as this last season, but still pretty bad. And
I've been pretty lucky, though. I did, spoiler alert, I did just play Surviving Maine as well, and we had some rain, so I did experience some rain there. A couple of miserable hours. Again, it wasn't like overnight that bad. There was one cold night, but it wasn't raining or anything. It was just kind of the aftermath of the rain. So my sleeping bag was wet, and woe is me, my sleeping bag was wet, right, on Survivor. So so I've dealt with a little bit of rain, but certainly not what these guys are going through, not what Survival Challenge last year went through or your season. I've been pretty lucky in my live game career. So
I mean, I hope it stays because man, like rain just makes everything harder. You're wet, your stuff is wet, and nothing is dry. Like you saw the camp is just like a mud pit right now. I'm just like, that sounds awful.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it is those few things that can really impact your decision making, can impact your desire to play in certain ways or play in other ways, right? Like when you're not as kind of, when the elements aren't hitting as hard, it's easier to maybe play in your optimal way that you would want to play versus, when you're getting pummeled by rain and miserable and you're sitting in the shelter and you can't really strategize. Like it does certainly impact your ability to play and your ability to play the way you want. So major shout out to this cast. They've gone through all of it. It seems like they've had hot, they've had cold, they've had wet, they've had muddy. So they're getting the full Survivor experience for sure.
Let's talk a little about this Merge because we saw 7 eliminations that took us from 17 players to 10 for this Merge. Now, your season, was that also 10 for the Merge?
So I am pretty sure it was 10, but we had the 2 returnees come back, so it was 12. Yeah. So they merged and then immediately brought the 2 back in, me being one of them, Lydia being the other. So we ended up having a 12-person merge.
So when you were watching the Kawanu 3.0 tribe go to those back-to-back tribal councils and like they're going from 6 to 4 and having those hard cuts, that was very similar to what you experienced.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, in a little bit of a different way, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, when they were really getting emotional over their decision to let go of James, it very much reminded me of my scenario when it was basically only us, Carlton. Now we're on the new Rutherford, but it was only former Carlton together. There was 5 of us. We lost a challenge, and we all just broke down in tears because we knew we were going to have to cut somebody we really cared about, and that was the vote in which Kenny went. I think Mike was really feeling responsible for losing the challenge, but we didn't know what was to come, so we didn't want to chop someone very similar to the situation that was tribe strength, and Mike appeared to be a very physical player. In case we had to go to another challenge, we wanted to keep him in the mix. But Kenny was also pretty physical. I mean, I don't think it was all about that. I think Kenny was a little bit more reserved in his strategy talk, and we didn't really know where his head was at. So not quite the same, but those emotions that they were feeling as they made that decision around James and telling him, I think was very bold of them all. I think they obviously knew where all the advantages and idols were. So they thought, right. And, you do build very genuine relationships in these 8 days that, I made the mistake of telling someone they were going home and then they idled me out. So, it's not always the wisest thing to do. But, I think they felt strong in that. It was, it's one of those really big TV moments. I think James took it really well. Listening to his exit interview and listening to his story, like, I think he got most of the experience he wanted. Of course, he's going to say he got the full experience, right? But, I think he did get a lot of the things that he wanted to achieve. Certainly from the audience perspective, we all loved him and loved his determination to overcome some of the challenges and to be open and vulnerable about some of those challenges. And the way that the cast embraced him, like, we were all feeling it too. So it was an amazing moment. It's certainly something that I think will be a mark on this season. Super excited that James got to be part of the jury, and his face lighting up when he heard that was just like perfection. So, that whole scenario really did remind me of our season and how deep and emotional this game can get. But yeah, I think a lot of the audience were praying for a merge much earlier, right? I think we saw the writing on the wall of what would happen if the merge was pushed to 11 or 10. I think on the yellow tribe, we knew it probably would be James, maybe Bash, maybe Keenan, like a lot of the characters that I think the audience have come to love. I think if blue went, we saw there was some risk for Megan, there was some risk for Storm. A lot of people that, I care about Megan. I know Storm has a lot of fans out there. So I think there's a lot of anxiety around, let's just get to a merge so we can kind of protect some of these characters and these people that we love. I think we got through kind of those last few rounds. We lost a couple of fun characters, fun players that went out a little too soon, but I'm excited to see what happens in the merge. I think there's a lot of interesting dynamics at play. I think it's going to be a wild next couple of days.
So I want to start with this first. We're going to the final 3, right?
I mean, I think that's what everyone's assuming, right? So you've got 10, you've got 2 on the jury right now. So you'd assume if we're going to have an odd jury that there'd be 7 more to join the 2. That makes a jury of 9 for a final 3. I think that's what everyone is assuming. There's rumor in the audience chat that Amos is a big fan of final 2s. So maybe he goes with final 2 and an odd jury of 10. An even jury of 10, I should say. That's a possibility. I don't know if he'd ever do a twist where he would allow someone to remove a juror
or give him an extra vote.
Or give a juror an extra vote in some way, right? So I think there are ways to get around it if there are twists planned down the road. But I think everyone's assumption right now, we heard them talking about it at the merge feast, was if James and Keenan are on the jury, that must mean it's a final 3. Because why would you have an even number of jury members? I mean, Survivor has done it, right? They've done it. They've never done it with a final 2, I don't think. But I think other games have. So
risky.
It's risky. It's certainly risky. So I think it's a good bet that it's probably a final 3, which I do think certainly changes the dynamic. it gives people a lot more options, but they also have to be a lot more critical, right? If they only have to bring one person to the end and beat just that one person, like I had to do last season, that's a very different strategy than I've got to think now about two different people that I can have a different case for or from or against. Who are those two people going to be, and how can I get them there without allowing them to build their resume?
So Adam Horton is letting us know that Survivor had final 2, the jury of 8 in a season 16 Micronesia.
Oh.
Wow. Okay. So this is where I admit I have not seen 10 seasons Survivor, and that is Micronesia is one of them.
I've seen this. This is the big controversial season of like they had all these injuries, so production made I think some last minute decisions around final 2 versus final 3. There's all this speculation that they made it a final 2 last minute, so Suri got screwed, and all these various things, right? So that is an interesting call. I did not remember that. So
I was thinking the last time we saw a season with the jury starting 2 rounds before merge, and the only thing I can think of is Heroes versus Villains, right? It has a couple of pre-merge players.
I think Coach was on the jury, right?
Coach and Courtney.
Yeah.
And then I know our favorite Island the Idols started the jury around early with whoever gets blindsided by Kelly's like limited time idol. I can't remember his name. Ends up on the jury.
Jason.
I don't know. It's the young guy in the season. We purge maybe memories. Let's not worry about season 39. Let's talk about Reelfoot instead.
Let's do that.
So let's talk about the lay of the land with this merge, because we don't have a lot of information to go off of, but this whole point is the gossip and speculate. So let's get down to business. So let's talk a little bit about let's talk about, I feel like there's 2 core alliances that will be butting heads.
Yeah, and that's all the audience is talking about right now is this really a 5v5 situation, right? Do we have like the Ryan, Angela, Lauren, Storm, and Casey? Sorry, not Casey. Sebastian, yes, thank you. I always mix those 2 up. Right, so Sebastian's former blue, but kind of joined yellow when he was kind of rejected by blue, right? And then the other side, you have the same situation where you've got Sharif, Josh, Barb, Meg, and now KC, who is kind of shunned by yellow and has joined blue.
We've had kind of 2 different people jump ship.
Yeah, so there is this potential 5-5 going at it. But you have had Megan on the yellow tribe for a little bit to bond with people like Lauren and Angela. There is some speculation that these ladies might try to, form something or try to pull Megan over, with kind of a woman strong type strategy. There's a couple of idols that are in play that could certainly mix things up. You also have both Lauren and Storm, I believe, or is it Sharif?
Lauren and
Sharif have the mark on them, so that could certainly play a factor. But it's kind of one from each alliance, so it kind of cancels it out in a way.
Yeah.
But the big talk right now in the viewers chat is this could be a 5-5 situation, and a lot of people are actually thinking Megan is that swing vote because she's had a little bit of time with both groups. She might be the most flexible or the most malleable player right now, and maybe have the most options. So I'm really interested to see how that plays out. If she's going to go blue strong, where, I don't know. I think she felt pretty close to Josh and Sharif pretty early in the game. I don't think she feels very tied to Barb. And I don't know that she feels all that tied to KC either, because I think they weren't on the same tribe.
They were meeting for the first time yesterday.
Yeah, they were like passing ships in the wind, right? Or that's not the right phrase. Something along those lines.
Yeah. So I guess because I was thinking so you can have, I feel like Megan, Casey, and Sebastian are going to have kind of the most flexibility and options to choose from, and those are the 3. They're going to be kind of the deciding factors between the alliances, and because honestly, I feel like the blue alliance is more likely to stick together in the long term than the yellow alliance.
Oh, you think so? So from my perspective, I feel like Lauren, Angela, and Ryan are locked. Like those 3 are, I think, the most unbreakable alliance in this group right now. I feel like, I don't know. I feel like Sharif and Josh are the kind of players that are gonna kind of play. I don't want to say self-interested, but if they're gonna
look at each other and go for each other.
if they see a sinking ship or they realize the target the other one is, I feel like they're more likely to break apart. I feel like
Yellow.
Angela, Lauren, and Ryan are like willing to go to rocks for their group, and it would be an amazing universe in which they kept Bash and got rid of 2 of their loyal numbers, and then Bash completely abandons ship and like finds another group, right? I would love that world. I don't know that Bash is going to do that.
Yeah.
But it would be so amazing.
Let's talk a little bit about Bastion, because like I get from what I've gotten from his confessionals, he talks about he wants to play with the underdogs, which is a very novel take on playing Survivor, or saying I want to play with those who aren't in the numbers and play from the bottom. And then like he's like, I think I found my underdogs. Just like, are these the underdogs?
Well, yeah, there was a confession where he said like because Yellow kind of ended up going down in the numbers, he's like, well, these are my underdogs now, even though these are all very powerful players. They're all going to be pretty good in challenges. But I think there's this optically, right? It looks like Yellow is down when it really is kind of a 5-5 at this point. But I think because Yellow lost the new Yellow, right? Like lost these last couple of challenges and had to get rid of people like Keenan and like James. There's this, I think, theory that Yellow is down at this point. And so I think he now sees that group as his underdog. So I truly don't see him straying from that. So you've got 4 there. I think it really does come down to Storm. I think Storm's going to stay loyal. Ryan passed him an idol of some kind, fake or real. We're still figuring that piece out. But I think that 5 is going to stay locked. Like I don't see a lot of flexibility there. My question is the Old Blue plus KC going to stay locked, or they're like, we're not going to rocks for each other, we're going to bail?
Well, I feel like, because it sounded like the vote was going to be some sort of split vote on Megan and Storm, right? To tackle 2 potential idol problems at the same time. I wonder if Megan is going to get wind of that and realize, like, I might be on the outs of this tribe more than I thought if I am the decoy or the backup plan, right? And so I feel like if that information gets out, I don't know how it would per se, but if Megan learns that, that could lead her to want to work with the Yellows, at least initially.
Yeah, I think it really is going to depend on where that information is coming from. If it's coming from the Yellows, that puts her in an interesting spot. Of, does she try to save herself and say, let's not have me be the decoy, I'll work with you guys instead? Or is she saying like, hey, these Yellows are targeting me, I've got to figure out a way to kind of get the Blues together and save myself, right? So yeah, I think that's she's in a really interesting spot. I'm really curious to see what tonight's going to be like and what those morning confessionals are like tomorrow, because so much can happen in this night, right? A thing that I think maybe hurts Megan's game is she just crushed this last challenge, right? She was in the final 2 with KC. She outlasted men that are twice her size and some badass women that were competing as well, right? Like she proved herself to be a challenge threat. So does that hurt her case? Or does anybody say like, hey, Megan's pretty strong, let's keep her around to help get out some other bigger targets, because she's going to be good in challenges, so she's more likely to win immunity than we are. Let's keep her around to try to beat out someone like a KC or a Bash or someone like that probably will be pretty good in challenges, you guess. So I'm really curious about that whole situation. I'm really curious, now that original Fire and Ice Yellow alliance is back together in some form, right? Without a couple of their members, like how
Dina was pretty much a sacrificial lamb. Right, just like
poor Dina.
Yeah. It was just like Angela had to choose which of the 4 mattered most, and Dina was not one, and Dina went home.
Yeah, that was another really interesting scenario. But yeah, so
because here's why I don't think the Yellow Alliance is as strong, because we've heard from Lauren saying, I'm worried about Storm. I don't see him as a person I want to be at the end, right? So I do think you're right. Like, Ryan, Angela, Lauren together might be a strong trio, but I think they're willing to, like, they might be willing to let Storm go and blindside him, and then
and their strategies can completely change now that it's merged, right? Like,
and
now it's merged. There's enough relationships in the mix. I think there are options for a lot of people to make new things happen now. I don't think it's as rigid as our numbers were last season, or as you may expect. So I think there is a little bit more fluidity. I think these first couple of votes are really going to determine the rest of the game, which I know is kind of cliche to say. Of course it is, but like
with the merge at 10, right? It's like things like that the 10-9-8 it very much can define the tone. I'm just thinking like when I played Survivor BC, right? The final 8 was like the like most important vote of the season, and things were locked from there on out with alliances and voting patterns.
Yeah. And it's interesting, right? Like I've played a game like when I played Survival Challenge in 2019, it was very fluid. Somehow like just it was a lot more voting blocks than it was ever alliances, from my view at least. Every round was a new configuration of people working together. So there's a lot of different ways that it can go. I mean, last year we were pretty much locked in on our 7. Of course, we had scary moments here and there, but we were pretty much locked in on our numbers. And it truly, like for me, it did not make sense to make any changes because I felt like there were multiple people within that 7 that I could rely on to get to the end and potentially would have a good case against. Where I feel like this group, there's a lot of contenders. There are a lot of people that I think can make strong cases at the end in these, especially in the Yellow Alliance. I think all 5 of them truly are have been playing well. I think, Bash would be such an interesting person to see in the end because he basically he made, there's not a ton of huge moves in the game yet, but like him flipping to yellow and getting them to turn on James and Keenan, if he can articulate that at the end and be like, I lasted when I shouldn't have, like that's a great story.
You want to see my social game? There you go.
Exactly. So without a lot to point at to say like big huge moves yet, I think we'll see some coming, but like so far, like that's a moment that stands out to me, like why they would ever give up a loyal number who's going to be less good in challenges like a James or a Keenan for Bash, who I think has a really cool underdog story. He's one of the older people in the game. He was kind of outside on his tribe, found a new alliance.
Felt like a little of his own doing.
Absolutely, but like he's adapted to the cards that he's kind of been dealt, or the cards that he dealt himself, right? And found a way. If he can find a way to get to the end, I think it's a really interesting story. And so I do think that Yellow 5, there's a lot more threats to their end game that they're going to have to start cutting. Because I think if you see a Ryan, Angela, Lauren final 3, it's anyone's game. And like, no one wants to take the risk of like, this could go any which way. You know? The
perceptions can greatly change over the span of those first couple of votes, right? Like, and that's kind of the scary thing is like, once people start thinking you're a certain way, like a day or two in the merge, like and sometimes you can have a really explosive end game and change it, right? But it's going to be you need to be cognizant of what's developing, how to break out that pattern. I think Marianne from season 4-2 is a great example. She's like, that's what people are seeing me as. How do I reverse this and how do I make it happen like sooner than later? And this is what I did. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think kind of like cognizance of what your perception is really hard in Survivor.
It's so hard. And it's so hard in these types of games because it's so odd because there's a ton of time, but there's never enough time, right? Like there's not enough time like in a Survivor game where you have days before you vote for people, but there's enough time to make you think about a lot of things.
I want to bring up this from Michael because Michael's saying like that the James and Keenan votes and like were just bad moves, and maybe like specifically if you're looking at those original tribe numbers, right? It's the Yellow tribe basically allowing the merge to be 5-5, right? Which they could have had it be 6-4, and like Keenan and James, there you wouldn't maybe have that doubt in your mind about Keenan and James jumping ship immediately. That maybe Sebastian, you might still like he's loyal, right? Thoughts on that?
I do think Bash is going to be very loyal to that group. I don't think there's a question there. I think Michael is right. I do think it's a bad move because you have the loyalty, and I think they're less of a threat, right? Like I do think, I mean, they're less James. If James finds a way to the end, he's so likable and has such a great story that's hard to. You're gonna have to cut James at some point if you want to try to win. I think he's a big threat the final 3, but I think you can beat him in challenges.
Eden's path
potentially,
though.
Although it looks like he crushes some puzzle challenges. Like I do think he has a skill set there. Keenan, I felt like was very aloof. Like this is just my hot take, but like he was just kind of goofy, and I think I mentioned this in the cast assessment that y'all did, was like, I don't know how much of that is an act versus how much of that is just him. I feel like he's one of those that's pretty transparent and is just himself. and he's just kind of goofy. And like, I don't know how threatening that is in the end.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know if people would vote for him in the end. Like, almost kind of Fabio-esque to me, like from that, from Nicaragua. Like,
My
he
worry
kind of
for
rolls with the
Keenan,
punches and has a good time, and
yeah,
it's kind of goofy. And
my worry for Keenan was
sometimes that
that
can
like
get you the win.
he would get to the end by like it seemed like he was, and maybe again things would really change. He was very pro yellow, yellow strong, and been fine going maybe more of a direct route to the end with yellow. Then who's he sitting next to that looks great for him? I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
So
I do think, from my perspective, and no shade to Keenan, it seemed to me like he was a little less strategic minded than some of the counterparts on yellow that he's up against, right? That seemed a little bit more like drivers in the driver's seat, controlling votes, controlling the moves. To me, so far, Keenan felt a little bit more like a passenger on the ride. So
that the initial alliance, I feel like forming, and like I've kind of locked him and James out of it from the get go. That was really killer to their games.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I agree with Michael. I think that those were tough moves. I think if I were in that position, I would have tried to hold on to one or both of them as long as I could have, just because they seem like loyal numbers, people I could potentially beat, people that I know. I do actually think James is pretty strategic. I just think you have many more opportunities to utilize James and potentially get rid of James if you feel like that need is down the road. So yeah, I'm so curious about kind of what's gonna happen next. I think there's the potential for a lot of fluidity. There's also the potential of like a rigid 5-5, like rocks type situation.
Well, maybe we get Millennials versus Gen X. They rock out at 10, and then like by final 9, final 8, it doesn't matter what those.
It's a big mess anyway.
Right.
Yeah. So.
So imagine you're Storm or Angela or Lauren, like you're in that yellow group. Who do you think you want to target first? Like where are you looking to put your votes?
I mean, like throwing it back to last year, right? We on our side wanted to try to take out the strongest people first, right? So like immediately we're like, Todd's a big threat, Carlos is a big threat, right? Like we were looking at the big guys, like the big targets, right? Which is kind of like cliche and super old school Survivor, and like not very innovative or open-minded of like who's a threat. So I think I might be, if I was on the yellow tribe, looking at somebody like Sharif or even a Josh, right? Like I think from at least the audience point of view, Josh seems very much in control. He puts himself in leadership spots and challenges a lot. He was the one that went to the summit, so he was kind of moving the tribes around. To me, there's a spotlight on Josh. So I could see Sharif, I could see Josh being early targets. And maybe even like a KC. I'll bring up kind of the first.
He has immunity. He can't go home the first trial.
True. But so we in the viewers lounge, we did do a quick little survey or a poll to, right before the merge challenge, the individual immunity challenge. So this is a little bit off kilter of data, but the viewing audience felt like KC was in the hardest spot going into the merge. So we said, who's at risk for this first merge vote. KC had over 45% of the votes. So people really saw him as being in a tough spot, which is interesting to me. Now that he's immune, the audience really sees Bash and Storm kind of next in the line of fire. So I'm curious to see if the audience is right, if they're getting that read the right way. Bash and Storm are both on the yellow side, so I don't know if they're thinking that Blue's going to somehow, pull a number over or use an idol in the right way to get one of them out. I'm not sure, but I think you've got a lot of, optically, a lot of big physical threats at this merge right now. You've got Sharif, you've got Storm, you've got Ryan, you've got even just Lauren and Megan proving themselves in this last challenge as physical threats. I think some of these physical threats are going to have to start going at each other. So But I think, traditionally this is always a spot where like a big guy, this is where the Jonathan of 42 typically goes home, right?
The Carlos
So
of season 9.
exactly. So I think probably right now they're trying to figure out who that is. But at the same time, they're probably just trying to figure out where their numbers lie and who are their loyal folks. And maybe loyalty right now, because it's such a tight vote, is more important than who's physical, who's strategic, who's a big threat to me. I just need to get through this vote with a majority so that I have more options the next round, right?
So then maybe we're not looking at the big targets, but the safe votes, right? It's like if you're looking to just like see which group comes out ahead, where can we put our votes that no one will expect to help nullify the Unaga idol that might be had somewhere that no one actually has.
Well, it's now supposedly someone does have it. Supposedly Storm does have it.
We mixed messages. Either we know Storm has the fake idol,
right?
We know he found a clue at the merge feast. I think is what was told by I think Taylor said he found the clue at merge feast. Then there's rumors he might also the Noga idol. I don't know.
Yeah. So I'm very curious for confessionals to see if we in the morning to see if we get any more clarity on where idols sit. I think we know Ryan has a real idol, and we know Ryan made a fake idol that is somewhere in the game. And then I think Josh has a fake idol, right? I just have not seen anything happen with that yet.
No, he's just holding on to it, I think.
To my knowledge. So I think there's a lot of just paranoia because idols haven't been played yet at any tribal council. I did overhear that at the merge camp life for a little bit. Megan directly asked Bash, like, did any idols get played at the yellow tribals? And he said no. He was honest about that. We haven't seen any idols played. So there's a lot of paranoia that there must be at least 2 idols out there, right? So I think it's interesting to think about kind of all the different possibilities right now. When you think about our season last year, we did go with Carlos because we felt like he was kind of a little bit somewhat unexpected, probably didn't have an idol. We didn't think people were going to play an idol on him. He was maybe the most unpredictable in terms of where his loyalties lie. So it felt like a safe vote that a lot of people could kind of get behind and feel good about for the next round. So I think it could be all about the safe vote right now and just getting yourself through this first one.
Michael Lulicas raised like, hey, what about the people who are marked, right? You already know 2 players are each getting a vote from each alliance. Should people just pile in on those as easy targets? Or maybe then there's the game theory. It's like, well, she's rigging a vote, so they're expecting us to vote more on her, so they're going to put out an idol for Lauren. Therefore, let's go for someone else instead. Like maybe we start having that kind of second guessing. I don't know.
Yeah, this is what's really interesting, right? With these 2 that are marked, there's a lot of ways you can play it. You can try to throw one of those out as the decoy vote, so that because it's already out there, those names are already out there, so that idols get played for those people, and then you actually vote for somebody else, right? It's because if Lauren gets an idol played on her and she only has that 1 vote, great, right? The 5 votes we have somewhere else are likely going to stick. You can pile up and put your 5 on that person so that they've got 6 votes, but you risk a 6-6 in that regard. And then I don't know what happens in the event of a revote. I don't think they stick, right? I think those votes don't count.
Stick. So I mean, it just doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, right? So I do think there's a way to maybe try to leverage this in a way to kind of say like, throw it out there, right? As the decoy, like, hey, Lauren's already got a vote. Let's just put our 5 votes there, but actually vote somewhere else. So that if an idol's in play, it hopefully goes to Lauren. If it doesn't, and it goes to somebody else that you voted for, at least then there's 1 vote for Lauren in there.
Safety, yeah.
That's kind of a safety net. Because what could be interesting is if somehow they both vote for people that get idols played on them, it's then a 1v1 Sharif and Lauren.
With a revote, yeah.
With a revote, which is wild, right?
I mean, you're a fan of tie votes, right? Isn't that what Survival Challenge 2019 is all about, is multiple ties all the time?
Yeah, but I agree. There was somebody, was it Drew? There was somebody this season of Reelfoot that said, I'm a bigger fan of past votes, not rocks. I can't remember who said it, but I was like, yes, I actually love past votes. I love that no matter when you are voted out, your vote could have an impact on the game later. I just have been so passionate about that. So
Adam Horton throws out, says like, hey, Lauren mentions like maybe or I guess it was, yeah. So hold on. He was saying like Keenan is your quote about past.
Keenan is the quote about, that's right. About
points
past
to
votes.
Keenan.
I love it. Keenan and I bonded in that moment. I love old school Survivor. Anyway, yeah. And I agree here with Adam/Lauren, right? Like Barbara could be a safe vote. It's very unlikely that Barbara has an idol, nor are people going to play an idol on Barb. It's just, unless they get wind of it somehow, right? It's very unlikely that someone like Sharif is going to toss his idol up for Barb. If he does, kudos to him. People that are willing to play their idols for other folks to save their game or to try to advance forward, I think is very bold. I don't know if I could ever do it.
you said there's a little bit of bitterness, maybe.
No,
but it worked out then.
I had an idol played for me in Survival Challenge, right? Like it was amazing and I felt great about it. I don't know why I was then voted out 2 rounds later, but it's fine. I'm not bitter about it. But like, if you're going to make those moves,
Jeremy and Stephen Fishback.
You've got to like make it count, and you've got to make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons, because you never know like when that idol could come in handy for you down the road, right? The other thing is, like, from my perspective, surprise idol plays that save you for a round are actually not that exciting and not that actually good for your game, right? You play an idol on yourself, you save yourself 1 round, you've shocked everybody, you've gotten rid of 1 target. It's so hard to recover from that and people not to still see you as a big target. So utilizing your idols in ways to actually save other people or kind of change the power dynamic, I think is almost better than making a big flashy move at 1 tribal and save yourself for 1 round. Because it just puts a bigger target on your back. It just makes you more of a threat. So, from my perspective, I've always liked when people play idols for other people and kind of try to take calculated risks with their advantages that maybe put less of a spotlight on themselves. So, I had an idol last season. I never actually had to play it. I basically used it as a tool to try to rebuild some trust with my alliance once I got back in the game. And basically said, hey, this is a group idol. It's so annoying, right? Whoever group idols, they're the worst. But I said, like, I will play this for any one of you. And, I did all the things to make sure that the idol didn't make me more of a target, but I didn't want to like play it 1 round to try to save myself and shock my alliance and like surprise everyone. Cause I just feel like it wouldn't build the trust. So I'm very curious about how these idols are going to get played. I do think it's really interesting how early and how openly Ryan talked about his idol. And, I'm interested to see if that comes back to bite him, because I think it's very known now that Ryan has that idol. Could make him a target. At some point people are going to want to flush it, I'd imagine. So it's always risky to tell a pre-merge alliance that you've got an idol. It's just, it's kind of wild.
So one thing I think is interesting is Jock has the official fake idol, right?
Right.
And fake idols I think are really tricky because, like, if you wave for think of Romeo in season 42 who says like, I have a fake idol. Oh, not I have a real idol. I'm not going anywhere. It's just like, because you're posturing with it, we know it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
It's like if you have a real idol, like it's fun to have that kind of like big reveal moment, right? Like, why would you deny yourself that?
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways to go about it, right? It's almost like finding the fine line of, you need to make sure that they know you have it, right? Because you want it to be scary for them, but you don't want to overplay it so that they're like, it's too much. It's probably going to be fake. Like, they wouldn't be that obvious about it if it was real. So you almost got to like find the appropriate way to make a slip up or a mistake where like it kind of bulges out of your bag for a few seconds, or something that kind of people can know it's there, but you're not overplaying it. You're not being so obvious or like telling people you got
like
it.
There's a little burlap sap, and everyone's like, "What's this?" While you're gone, they're like, "Oh my gosh!" Or like, or like maybe you just tell the wrong. You knowingly tell like a person who's been a little leaky with information. You're like, it'll circulate.
Yeah,
but it's like.
You've just got to be an actor. You've really got to be able to play that social part or that strategic part of like getting the information out there without feeling like it's over the top, without feeling like it's so sloppy. People are going to assume or question that it's real. I think every scenario is different of how you can most appropriately play a fake idol. I think Josh's other option is to very willingly give it to someone else and say, this is an idol, save yourself, and then swiftly vote them out, right? Because then they feel safe, they're going to play it. I think it's an opportunity to try to gain someone's trust, get them comfortable, and then boot them. So I just played Surviving Maine. An ally handed me an idol to try to save me for a round, and the entire time I was questioning if it was real. I was like, is it? Why would you give me an idol? Is this a real idol? Like, I was like, I'm going to play this for myself and look like an idiot. So, I think there is an opportunity to not only make people scared about you, but use it as a tool in the game to build trust, to potentially make someone feel safe so you can then blindside them. And there's a lot of other ways to play a fake idol without it just being about like, I'm going to use this to try to protect myself.
Because like the only downside of like letting people know you have an idol when it's fake is then you're like, well, what if people start targeting me and expect me to play it and I can't?
Exactly.
So, and then the downside of like, using it to backdoor a person out of the game is like, then it kind of goes to jury management. Like
there's always that piece, right? You've got the Sugar Bob Randy situation from Gabon, right? Yeah. Where they gave Randy a fake idol and everybody laughed about it and kind of, he felt horrible and embarrassed. And then he's on the jury and like, why would he vote for that? So I think I'm really interested to see how idols are going to affect the rest of this game. There's a lot of things out there in the mix between fake idols, real idols. I don't know if there are other advantages of any kind. I haven't heard of anything. I think we know there's outside of the mutinies, right, that were used. But I haven't seen anything else in terms of extra votes, steal of votes, other types of powers. And in Reelfoot, I mean, last season it was pretty simple. One thing I loved about Reelfoot is, there are idols in the game. There were a couple of little powers that people got from the store we had last year, but it wasn't over the top. It wasn't like Advantage Armageddon, as some games do. So I do think that the simplicity of that is good. It's you're always going to be questioning what's potentially down the road or what potentially is out there, but I think Reelfoot does a really good job of keeping it fresh and keeping everybody on their toes without, I think, over planting advantages and kind of peppering them too much.
So we haven't seen all season 3. Only the first 2 episodes are out. So I don't know when the medallion that marks a player goes out of the game. I have to imagine final 6.
That's what I was kind of thinking is probably, in that 5, 6, maybe even 7 range.
So this creates an interesting dynamic, right? Because I have to imagine we have 2 in play right now, but we'll only see 1 probably go back in circulation.
That's what I would guess.
And so let's say the Yellow Alliance wins out.
Let's
say the Yellow Alliance wins out.
Production member Nate just added a very interesting comment.
I mean, is this real? Okay, good. I'm just like, man, after we just praised Wilma for not doing like crazy things like a idol reinvigorator, like, oh no.
And with a shirtless picture like that, how can you not trust him, right? All right, so it sounds like that's a joke. Never mind, ignore me. Anyway, I got excited about it.
So imagine Yellow wins the first vote. Let's say it ends up being 5-5 and 5-5 in Rockjar or something really close, right? A blue goes home and they're naturally gonna mark the yellow, right? And so now you have an interesting situation is where a yellow is gonna have an extra vote, and so
it can still be a 5-5.
But also it makes it much more attractive to flip.
And I think it's really interesting the person that goes out, like who they target, right? I think it's really interesting because then that person's then ending up on the jury, right? So I think it reveals a little bit of cards of like who they don't want to see get to the end, right? So then in your mind you say like, oh, Steve just marked this person. They're not feeling Steve. Maybe I want to bring Steve because they're not going to want to vote for him at the end, right? Maybe that's not you, Steve, but
Of all the players marked this game, only Keenan's gone home with it, and I have to wonder because I feel like his decision of who the mark is likely is going to have larger ramifications than a lot of the other marks, right?
Yeah.
And it was interesting to see that he marked Lauren over Sebastian. And granted, like, if I got voted out by my alliance, I would be like,
Yeah, it's really interesting that he chose Lauren of all of them, right? Like, for me, I might have been like, I'm going to do Ryan. I know he's got the idol. So, like, I want to put a spotlight on him.
Raise your hand if you want the disadvantage. Everyone's like,
yeah,
don't look at me. Not making eye contact.
Like, why Lauren over the others? I don't know if he said that in his exit interview or not, but no. Yeah, I'm very curious what that means. But yeah, I'd imagine, you know, it'll last through the next few rounds. I think it will probably affect outcomes and kind of where people start throwing votes. So yeah, I'm really curious to see how that plays out as well. Yeah. So you want a little viewer info?
Yeah. Let's keep going.
So a couple questions we asked right at the top of the survey were, who do you want to win the game and who do you think will win the game? So who do you want versus who do you think will win the game? So we obviously know we've got a lot of Storm fans out there. Storm's a big name in the org community, a lot of people supporting him. So Storm did very well in the who you want to win the game category, but he didn't actually win. So as of right now, the audience, person that got the most percentage of the votes, was Angela for who they want to win. Now, who they thought is going to win the game, Storm did win that with about 40% of the vote. So people want Angela to win. I think Angela's playing an amazing game. I think she's been very well-rounded. I think she's in a good position of power where she can claim some things that she's done in the game so far. But I still think people are seeing other people more threatening than her, at least from what I've heard and seen. You know, she has, I think, an interesting story to tell. Storm to me is a little bit more of a mystery. I know there's a lot of fans out there. I don't want to throw shade. I don't want to get hate from the org community. I haven't seen a ton of gameplay from him just yet. And I know it's in there, right? Everyone talks about what an amazing org player he is. You know, I'm sure it's there. I just haven't seen a ton of it. You know, I think the early blue votes were kind of, I don't want to say predictable, but there wasn't any like major gameplay there. And he's kind of been holding on. You know, he was just in the minority. He was given this idol, but didn't really ever need to do anything with it. So I'm hoping to see a couple of big moves from Storm in this merge section, because I haven't seen it yet. And not that everybody's got to play big flashy moves. Like, I didn't actually play that really any big flashy moves last season. But I do think you've got to make sure you've got a little bit of a resume. So, you know, I'm really curious to see what he brings to the second half of this game to, I think, back up the amount of love he's receiving, because the viewer chat blows up about Storm every time there's a challenge.
You can do no wrong.
Him. And so, you know, I want to see a little bit more gameplay from Storm specifically, because I want to root for him. I just haven't seen anything specific just yet that I can be like, that's a cool thing he did. So that's my thoughts on that. Outside of that, everybody got a few votes for those as well. There's obviously some fans out there, but those were so Angela and Storm seem to be on the top of the radar in terms of people that they want to either win or think they will win. Right now, we did ask, like, who do we think would have the toughest case at Final Tribal if they get there? And I think, not surprisingly, Barb got the most amount of votes for that. I think Barb is such a fun character. I've loved the blindfold challenge, and Barb might be like my favorite LRG moment of all history. Like, she's so hilarious and so sassy. And I think there's a lot of social gameplay for Barb. I've really watched her connecting with people, being just herself, connecting with Angela over their kids. And, you know, I think she's playing the game, but I don't know if it is very strategic forward, but I think she is playing the game, right? You know, I think a lot of people, you know, there's been some jokes like, you know, is she going to go nap on Ronnie's tree? I don't think she's like a napper like Ronnie was, right? Like, I think she's a little bit more active in the game. I just worry that people are seeing her as a loyal number or a loyal soldier for some of these bigger players. So I would love to see Barb come out of her shell a little bit and like make some big moves, maybe with the ladies, or, you know, take out a big target or two and really like play the game. I actually don't know how much of a Survivor fan she is.
Yes, I mean, from my understanding, like she is more of a Reelfoot fan because of your season last year than a Survivor fan as a whole. So, like,
right.
I think one of the challenges, she's kind of coming out of a different paradigm. She's not burdened. She's not. The way she plays isn't informed by U.S. Survivor and a lot of past seasons. So she's playing in a very organic way herself. I feel it's gonna be a little bit like Mike in 42, where like he had this very natural social game, but then like he failed the explaining side of it. And so like if she does get the end, 100%. I hope she can do a good job really articulating like, this is what I did. And yes, I was myself. I played myself. I did everything I normally do, and I was able to maneuver here through that by being my genuine, likable self and use my social game to sit here.
Right.
I mean,
100%. You articulated the way that I couldn't. I believe her game is a lot more organic than it is like game bot, right? Like she's not coming in here as like an org player or a live game player that's like obsessed with Survivor and thinking about strategy all the time. She is being herself. She is making choices to be a part of alliances and go with groups. So I do think there's a gameplay there. It's all going to come down to who she's sitting next to, and if she can somehow articulate what she has done in that genuine organic gameplay to get herself there. So I'm curious.
I want to bring in something random. I heard Sebastian say that he does not want to sit next to anyone who's articulate at the end. I heard him say like that's the criteria for voting people. I'm just like,
that was a really cool point that I heard, and I think that was kind of part of the underdog monologue, right? Like he, and if you think about it, the people that seem the most articulate to me are Josh. I mean, I feel like Josh could talk himself out of anything. Super articulate, super sharp guy. I feel like Angela is very articulate. She's also, she's had some emotional moments in this game. I think she's got the emotional story, and I think will pull at people's heartstrings, and like she can talk very passionately and emotionally. So I could see Bash being cautious of the two of them specifically. Trying to think of who else. When I hear them, like Ryan doesn't seem all that articulate, but I feel like he's playing the game full tilt, right? Like I think he's kind of quiet, a little bit more reserved. I've been so intrigued by him. I was from get-go. I was like, he's kind of like a good old boy that like, he works hard. He's a Boy Scout, like he's rough and tough in the woods. But I actually think there's a lot behind his brain and how he's playing and the strategy that he has. He found an idol like nothing.
I think the way he's used the idol and capitalized on it and doing the fake idol, I don't think he'll have an issue at the end really kind of saying, this was my game.
Yeah.
These are things I've done.
I'm curious to see if he can break out of the shell though, right? And maybe people will be like, that's just Ryan. Like he's not, the warm and fuzzy, super articulate type of person. But I think he's so interesting to me. Like I actually really like him as a character in the mix. Because I think you have some super like cerebral and social players and strategic players, and like I think Ryan's like this really interesting mix of all those things, but not too outwardly. Like I feel like his brain is always moving, but it's a little bit more internalized. So I'm really curious to see what he does over the next few rounds to stand out, to warm up his social game a little bit more, that kind of stuff. Because people trust him, and that's one of the most important things. Is people love him, they trust him, and I'm really curious to see where his game goes. I feel like I've got a good read on a lot of people. He's the one that is also kind of mysterious to me next to Storm. Those are the two that I'm like, where are they going to go next? What's going to happen with the two of them next? So we asked a question around who is the most robbed so far of those that are eliminated. You probably can guess who
Dina?
It was.
Was it Dina?
It was Dina, of course. Robbed Queen Dina. I think everyone loved her on the lives, right? She fun character, tells it like it is.
The Queen of Leisure.
Yeah, she was a badass. Would have loved to see her in this individual, because I think she's one of those players that is going to mix it up and is going to, want to make big moves, and so wasn't surprised by that vote. also voted the most fun character that's been eliminated. Not only the one that's been robbed, but also just like the most fun to watch. So shout out to her. I think hopefully she feels the love from the audience, because people really enjoyed her on the season. So and I'll say the most fun challenge, or the people that challenge love the most, was the blindfolded challenge. It was hilarious. It was amazing. I don't know if any members of production are still on, but I absolutely have to give a shout out. The challenges this season have been amazing to watch. So well produced. We had great challenges last season. I feel like they just keep stepping it up every year, and I've been so jealous of something like the slip and slide looked so fun. The structures they built to shoot the balls in were really cool. Like
they had Applebee's. Like, that is the most
Applebee's.
Around the game.
Just like upgraded everything this season. So I will say our breakfast last year was pretty damn good. Like Applebee's would be pretty heavy. I think some people had some stomach issues after Applebee's, but
I was seeing comments about season 8's Mexican feast.
Oh yeah, I heard the Mexican feast was by far the worst. Huge shout out to the production team. I think the challenges this season have been really, I think, creative and well put together, and I'm super jealous. Like I want to go back and play them all. So I love if anybody hasn't watched the blindfold challenge, go back and watch that one. It is hilarious. And I think just a really, really fun challenge to watch. Especially Barb. She is the queen of all things blindfolds. I love it.
So, looking back at the season so far, what are some of what are some of the biggest missed opportunities, or you think like biggest mistakes that you've seen made?
Oh boy. I don't know if there are a ton of mistakes. I don't necessarily agree with all of the pre-merge boots, especially we've already at Labor talked about Keenan and James, right? I don't know that I agree with that decision. I also don't know if I agree with Carly being the right pick out of, I think, Carly, Megan, and who was the third blue option? Was it Bash? I don't know that I would have gone that route. True.
I don't know about that.
I don't know about that, DeLucas.
That might be a hot take.
From an audience point of view, Drew seemed like quite the personality to deal with on the track.
Drew crew. Bring it back.
Super fun for us as an audience member. And who knows if Blue could have won some more challenges early with Drew there as opposed to somebody else. Who knows? But I think, to their point, right, early in the game, a lot of it is around tribe unity and minimal drama and less chaos. And I think Drew has a little bit of all of that. Loved it. Loved the character. Loved his exit interview. But I think, okay. Maybe I agree with that. No, I think it is so hard. Anybody that goes to play this game, it is so hard in those early moments and early days of the game to just kind of let the game happen and not overplay. I think it's very hard when you know or you don't know that you've got a day of reward challenges. You've got time to know when to turn on the gas and when to slow down.
But then you have this season where this majority of 5 kind of locked it in by midday 2.
and that's what's hard about it is you've got to play the dynamics of the group that you're with. And so it's really, really hard. And so I don't blame Drew for kind of getting paranoid when he did, and trying to jump into conversations, maybe feeling like he was a little too late. I think it was a little on the sloppy side, but I don't know if he could have recovered. I don't know if there was anything he really could have done in those moments to make a difference or to change. But he was super fun, and I was disappointed to see him go early, because I love when characters stay running the game, right? When people that are gonna, say what's on their mind and be entertaining for us go out early. So, I think, as we talked about, I think James and Keenan, I might have done things differently there. I'm not sure if it was a mistake. I think for me, I might have tried to handle the summit a little bit differently. If I were Josh, I would have said hey, I'll sacrifice one person to you if you let me have a majority on my tribe, right? Like he didn't even try for a majority on his
I don't
tribe.
think he could have. I think they had to pick all
Well,
tribe.
so this was a little bit unclear to me, right? Like at the beginning, they said he's got to alternate picks back and forth, but then they just kind of did like I'm going to take this person, you take this person. Like it seemed kind of like a jumbled mess. So I don't know if he could have done anything differently there. Maybe not. But I think I don't know if I would have handled that summit a little bit differently. Again, I don't know if that's a mistake, but I think, it was interesting the way that went down. I loved that moment. I thought that was one of the coolest moments of the season so far. I think that negotiation, those talks were really interesting to watch, the dynamics between the two of them. So, I think, I don't know if it's a mistake, but I think that that's something that I might have handled differently in one of their shoes or the other. No, I mean, I think, it was a mistake to not stick with the word victory for a little bit longer and see if you could come up with any other combinations for victory.
Yes, like because they were so close and they just like
that poor blue team.
I was like, oh no, because immediately I saw, I was like, oh, they just rearranged like a word.
Yeah, they just gave up on victory so quickly. So that was painful. I mean, it's so hard when you're not in the dynamics there to know what our mistakes and what we would have done differently, right?
I'll throw one to you.
Yeah.
Blindsiding Casey in the first vote was a mistake, and the tribe should not have done that.
Yeah, I could see an argument for that. I mean,
I think Casey would have capitulated. He wouldn't have been happy, but he would have let it go to be with the majority, and then he would have been more willing to play nice in the swap.
Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, and that's kind of what happened, in our season. That first vote, there were a few people that didn't want to vote for Lydia, Mike being one of them, and we decided to still clue him in on the vote and say, this is what a majority of us are doing. We still want you to be in this group. So I think he ended up going along with it. But the dynamics, I don't know if there was concern. I mean, Ryan had the idol, so I don't know what they would have thought Casey would have done to try to save Megs.
Yeah, it's
so maybe that. Yeah, I could see that.
I mean, Ryan had the idol. I mean, I think there is huge value in playing nice with your initial tribe and trying to have things as streamlined as possible, just to make sure you don't have what you had where like Casey's jumping ship, Dina's jumping ship, and like Josh's like, well, I get to have my pick.
Yeah.
And then the Vision 2020 award, I think of whoops. Now we can look this in hindsight, is Keenan mutinying.
Yeah, that's such a hard call, right? Because Angela gives him the mutiny, so he's got to be of the mindset that she wants him there. She wants to work with him. That's a hard call, because there's no way for him to know the other tribe's not going to keep winning, or that they would keep winning. Exactly. That's hard. That's a hard.
And maybe like he definitely wouldn't have been a great spot in the blue tribe, but I think Storm likely gets target over him, so maybe it's a split vote on him and Storm goes out first, and then you mutiny.
Right.
It's just like it's just one of those calls like, how much of a buffer do I have? And he called it right. I have a buffer. He knew he had a buffer of one. That just wasn't enough.
Yeah. I'm wondering. It's interesting. Yeah. And if he doesn't mutiny, but Josh still does, then it's a 7-5 split, right? So like that's an interesting thing too, because they get to sit people out of challenges, so they can kind of optimize their challenge abilities. So yeah, I think that's interesting. And I think per the rules, I don't think that they can do it after the challenge happens, right? They'd have to wait till the next round after tribal and do it right before the challenge again.
So like. Maybe like, that would have been an uncomfortable tribe to be on with you and Sharif, but maybe just or you and Storm were like, well, maybe I can ride it out, then jump ship the next time. But I do agree that like present value, like I probably would have jumped to my original tribe. But like I think at least from watching the feeds, Keenan felt much more like connected to the tribe than it felt like the tribe felt connected to him. So.
Yeah, I think he had a hard read on that group. I think it's just I don't think he saw the connection to Bash. I mean, who would ever predict that, right? Like,
Sebastian might be my player of the pre-merge because of that.
Yeah, I mean, he is a mystery, but I like it. You know,
it's the hard. I mean, playing from the bottom minority and ingratiating yourself, it is always amazing when you see someone pull that off.
Yeah.
I'm thinking callback Survival Challenge 2018. Kathy was in the minority and like survived multiple votes and worked her way into the majority on her third tribe, and it was just kind of phenomenal to watch happen.
Yeah.
And like,
yeah, I'm very curious, you know, and it's interesting that we kind of had one from both tribes, right? Like Casey did a similar thing on his side as well. So I'm curious to see kind of how that plays out and if that sticks. You know, watching the merge tribe camp, it's so interesting to see kind of who's pairing off and who's talking to who. And it, you know, I think everyone's playing the game, so they're all trying to make sure they're talking to everyone. And kind of try to get a read on what's going on. So I'm really curious. I need the confessionals tomorrow morning are going to be so revealing about what these last 12 hours have been like and where the numbers are actually sitting.
We're kind of at the hour mark. So walk me through your winner pick and who you think is going to make it to the final four.
Oh, that's so.
And why is it Megan? No.
That's so hard. No, so here's my thing. I mean, I don't think it's a secret, right? Like I'm friends with Megan outside. Like she's on my softball team. She is a wonderful human. And I really am loving watching her play because she kind of got a short end of the stick in Survival Challenge when she played last year. So I'm glad she's getting a better experience, a longer experience. She's getting to experience more facets of the game and experiencing what it's like to time. So I love Megan. I think someone wrote in the comments, right? She may have waited a little too late to start playing some harder strategy. I think she does find herself in an interesting kind of almost swing vote position right now, and maybe she can leverage that into a couple of big moves that give her a good story at the end. But I worry about she's got a lot of big players around her that might just swallow her up. So, you know, and I think she's also exposed herself as a challenge threat, especially with this last challenge, right? Like
and she might have an idol. Who knows?
And there's all this talk of her having an idol, which I don't understand how that even started.
Well, it's like, she was searching really hard, then she stopped. That means she has it.
She was getting a lot of firewood, and then she stopped getting firewood. So it must mean she has the idol. So yeah, I mean, I think her chances are hard right now. I think she's probably, I don't think she's in as a tough a boat as Barb, but I think she's got a hard road ahead to get to the end with a good case. And I hope she can find it. I hope she can make a couple of cool moves and surprise some people, win a couple challenges, and it's not too little too late. But either way, I think, you know, I'm excited to see her continue to play the game and get a better experience. If I had to have to do a winner pick right now, I think for me, I'm going to kind of agree with some of the voters and go with Angela. I am certainly rooting for a woman to win. It's been far too long. And, you know, I think it's always tough when you go into a season with imbalanced gender, you know, gender numbers. I think these four ladies that are left, out of the four, I think Angela maybe has the best shot. I think she's doing a really good job of playing, but not playing too hard, not being seen as such a threat. I think Lauren's out there as a threat.
Yeah.
Before Angela, she's got a good shield in Lauren. I think she's got a good shield in Ryan. I think she's crushing it socially. I think she's pulling her weight in challenges. I do think she's a good talker. So I think if Angela can get to the end, I think she's got it. She obviously built really good relationships with James and Keenan, two members on the jury. She's already got 2 votes, I think, personally. And I don't know that she necessarily did that for jury management. I think she's just that kind of human. But it helps in the game as well. So I'm really digging her. I think another person that I could absolutely see getting towards the end is Josh. I just think he's super smart, super sharp. I think if he can utilize shields like Sharif and KC, right, and kind of like hide behind them and, you know, kind of get himself further down the line, being less of a threat, but still kind of being the puppet master in the background. And and potentially utilizing people like Barb, like Megan to get to the end, I think he's got a good shot. I love Lauren. I'd love to see Lauren at the end. I think she also could have an interesting case. It's so hard. I think there are so many good players. And like I've said, it's so hard to make big moves in games like this and not get immediately targeted after. You've got to find the right way to make them subtle but big enough. It's really, really hard. And at the same time, you've got to sit next to someone that just doesn't have as much of that cool stuff as you do. So, I don't know that anybody has like that big move that like everyone's pointing to. I think
we have time to make it happen.
Got time. We've got a couple more days. I think, Angela has the summit that she can point to as something interesting. So does Josh. I think Angela has like, hey, I chopped some allies that I needed to chop when, in Keenan and James. As does Lauren and Ryan, obviously, right? But I think it's so interesting that I feel like, to me, Angela is at the core of that a little bit more. And maybe it's just because I saw more emotion in her and I saw how hard it was for her. And I saw, like, to me, it just felt like she was the leader in that vote. I don't know if that could just be my optics. So I think they have really interesting stories. I know all the Storm fans out there want Storm to win. I hope to see big moves from Storm, or a couple of things that I can just point to and say, yes, that was a badass thing and like deserves to win. I think there's a bunch of contenders. I think Ryan is a really interesting story. As I said, I think Bash has an interesting story. They're depending on what happens in the next few rounds, like there's a lot of people here that I think could build an interesting case. It's just going to be like who can grab one or two kind of signature moves that they can point to articulate at the end and tell their story. Yeah,
it's hard.
It's hard. It's hard. So if I have to pick one right now, it's Angela, and it's not just because I kind of know Angela outside the game as well. I think I would love her regardless of that if I just closed my eyes and didn't know anybody. She's a standout to me. I think to me that's kind of where my gut goes. I think Josh is a close second for me, which is so interesting because in the beginning of the game I was not feeling Josh at all, but I've really liked his progression. I like his story. I think he's taken advantage of the opportunities that he has had to steer the game in the way that he wants. And again, it's hard because I haven't watched every confessional, but I might be a little more biased towards the folks that I've watched more of their confessionals or seen more of them in the game. It's so hard not knowing because you don't see people, you're not there with them. You don't see what they're doing. So can't wait for Final Tribal. Can't wait to watch these people articulate their game and tell us the things we might have missed. Tell us the things that they feel like they've done. Super excited to watch the next stretch and ignore my day job for a couple more days.
I was doing some data collection, so I was like, oh, this is great to multitask too.
But on the survey, we got a ton of shout outs and comments about the production team. Comments like very well organized, love being able to watch in real time. So shout out to the live stream crew and the media crew. Great people in the game, great cast. A lot of good people were kicked out early, which means, you booked a lot of good people because a lot of favorites went out early. Someone said the best season yet. So, there's a lot of love. The live stream chat is very active. So, if you're listening, production, keep it up. We are all on the edge of our seats. We're loving every minute. And I cannot wait to pass my crown, as it were, on to the next winner. And just get this damn target off my back. I don't want to be known as the winner of Reelfoot anymore.
That was so last year, right?
So long ago, right? So yeah, I'm really excited. I wasn't sure when this all started, like how addicted I would be to the feeds and like if I would pay much attention. I can't stop. People in the live chat are probably so annoyed by me at this point because I just comment on everything. But it's been so much fun to watch. It's such a cool group. I think, again, the game elevates every year and just keeps getting better and better. So I already have people reaching out to me like, how do I apply? And what should I do and give me tips. So, I think Reelfoot is it's the best it's ever been. So I'm excited to see what happens next.
Justin, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time tonight, because I know it's an hour later where you are compared to where I am. So thank you for being flexible and taking the time to do this. Thank you, Reelfoot Production, for running Reelfoot so we could spend all our time watching it and talk about it. This has been a great season so far. I think it's going to be a very interesting merge. I will also waking up early tomorrow morning to kind of figure out what on earth are people thinking, where are people going, because the answer is we have no idea if we're actually going to see a 5-5 showdown, or we're going to see maybe something more subtle happen.
Yeah, I'm so curious. Thank you, Steven, for the opportunity to be here. Way past my bedtime, but here I am anyway. And this is the exact shirt I wore when I was playing last year. This is the buff. This is my hat from the season. So I dressed it all up just to bring me back to those moments. I had such a great time, and I look forward to hopefully chatting again as we get towards the end of the season.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, listening. Hopefully, there'll be some more recaps coming up through the week, and we have 3 days left, so get excited. It's the merge, and it will never fails to entertain. So take care, everyone.
Good night.